All right. All right, everyone can see the video? Some thumbs up. All right, enjoy.
Nestled in the beautiful suburb of Florham Park, Cheshire Home is New Jersey's leading provider of short-term rehabilitation for those who have experienced a life-changing event such as a spinal cord injury. Our 35-bed facility doesn't just provide specialized nursing care. Other services include psychological and emotional support, on-site physical and occupational therapy, vocational and educational programs, therapeutic diets, transportation, recreation, and much more.
A person considering Cheshire Home has likely experienced an unexpected, life-altering event. They need to make important choices about the next phase of care, and they're looking for a place that understands their unique needs. For more than 40 years, Cheshire Home has been providing personalized care and meeting the rehabilitation needs of people with spinal cord injury and neurological disorders. We have the resources, programming, and expertise to help people on their journey towards gaining the skills needed for independence. Our compassionate staff assist residents and their families, instilling hope for living a meaningful life after injury.
Cheshire Home is led by a team of skilled professionals. We meet a resident soon after a traumatic spinal cord injury, a maturity onset neurological impairment, a congenital impairment, or sometimes residents come post-injury to be reevaluated. The decision to go to a nursing facility is a difficult one to make. We try to make that transition as smooth as possible. All of the disciplines work cohesively to treat the entire individual. Each admission is unique, but we follow some core principles. By following that regime, it permits the resident and their family to rest assured about their clinical care and focus on healing and living again.
After being involved in an accident, I was lucky to find Cheshire Home. From therapy to the vocational department, care staff, and residents, everyone has a part in your quality of life and helping you reach your goals. After spending 14 months at Cheshire Home, I've moved back into the community and regained my independence. I couldn't have done it without them.
At Cheshire Home, we seamlessly blend our state-of-the-art rehab gym with the expertise and knowledge of our dedicated therapists, redefining what is possible. Each day, we celebrate our residents and their smallest achievements, watching them transform into remarkable triumphs over time. We empower our residents to harness their strengths and guide them towards goals that once seemed impossible. We help our residents build a strong body and mind, propelling them on their unique rehab journey towards a truly fulfilling life.
I was raising my daughter and living a normal life when everything changed. My spinal cord injury made it impossible for me to return home after being in the hospital, and I needed help. Being at Cheshire Home has allowed me the opportunity to recover at my own pace and focus on getting better without adding any unnecessary stress to my family. And the home-like atmosphere is so welcoming. My daughter loves visiting me at Cheshire Home. Now I can look to the future knowing that everything will be okay.
Thanks for helping my mom.
Cheshire Home is more than just a facility for young adults with spinal cord injuries. It's a home where these individuals can reclaim their independence through personalized care. We know there is independent life after major injury because we've helped over 250 residents in our 40 years. Cheshire Home has the tools, the experience, and the dedication our residents need to reach their goals and get back that independence. Come visit us and you can see goals being met every day, from the wiggling of toes and fingers to cooking from your chair to vocational training and even creating art. Cheshire Home is truly a special place and you will feel the difference. I am so honored to be part of the family.
And here I am in person. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Albitz, and I am honored to be the chair of the Board of Trustees of Cheshire Home. We're proud to have graduated over 265 residents in the past 40 years, and as you just saw, we continue to build success stories every single day. Today, we're speaking with the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. They are generous supporters of Cheshire Home, helping to purchase our call bell system and technology for our therapy and vocational departments. Partners such as this one contribute directly to the Cheshire Home residents, helping them achieve their goal of independence. But before we dive into today's informative discussion, I'd like to introduce Mark Clement, who has been a Cheshire Home board member for 16 years. Mark's going to share his story, how he joined Cheshire Home and why he's still involved today. Mark?
Thank you. I didn't even realize it had been 16 years. Matter of fact, when I was approached about today, I said, you know what? I didn't even know. I think it's about a dozen, whatever it is. As it turns out, it's 16. About a little about me, and I don't want to dwell too much on me, but I practice law. I'm also a part-time municipal judge. I experienced a spinal cord injury at the age of 18 when I was a freshman in college, and I've been in a chair for the last 54 years. At that time, my situation was that they told me not to go back to Cornell University because it wasn't built for wheelchairs, things like that. Now you tell a stubborn, hard-headed Italian American guy, don't do something, and the first thing he's going to do is do it. Okay, so I went back up there and I finished my time there, got a second degree, and then eventually ended up in law school. The difference, I think, in my situation and a lot of the residents we have at Cheshire is that I was incredibly fortunate to have a large family that was in the position to offer emotional support, financial support, and support in every other sense. Now, back then, compassion took on a slightly different flavor. It pretty much meant a kick in the ass if you weren't doing things you were supposed to do. Nowadays, they treat that a little differently, perhaps. But the point is that when I was introduced to Cheshire through a former board member, I recognized the fact that I was more fortunate, but that not everybody was in that position, so that Cheshire offers that incredibly unique situation where there is a halfway point between being in acute care and being able to live independently. So I'm more than happy to devote my time and some of my resources to the support of Cheshire, where, unlike other boards I've been on, every single dime goes towards or benefiting the residents of Cheshire. So I think their mission to provide that intermediate step puts them in an incredibly unique position. And it's nice to be a part of that. It's nice to be part of that mission. And I'm happy to keep doing it and keep people moving forward towards their rehabilitative process to be able to get back into the community and to do something even after a spinal cord injury, which can be a little tough to deal with. But it's a pleasure to be here. It's nice to see all you folks on screen, and enough about me.
Thank you, Mark. And now we're going to hand the microphone over to Erica, who is our moderator for today. Let's get started, Erica. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this Circle of Friends discussion. I'm Erica Weber. I am a neuropsychologist by training, and I'm a board member of Cheshire Home and on our Fund Development Committee. And in my role, I do a lot of psychology and cognition and rehabilitation work. And I came to Cheshire realizing how unique this place is. And we wanted to facilitate this conversation with the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, because we realized also how fantastic of a job that they do in supporting this very important population. So that's going to be the focus of our conversation today, focusing on research and resources for people with spinal cord injury and other types of paralysis. So let me introduce who we're going to be having with us today. So we're so pleased to have Dr. Marco Baptista. He's the Chief Scientific Officer, and he leads Reeve Foundation's mission to advance cures for SCI and paralysis. He provides oversight of their research portfolio and a collaborative approach to accelerating the field toward meaningful treatments. And previously, he had been an associate principal scientist at Merck, leading a preclinical Parkinson's disease program that helped develop field-enabling resources that were key to better understanding the genetic causes of Parkinson's disease. and is now translating that information and those skill sets into what's helpful for people with paralysis. So we're also joined by Regina Bly, who is the Chief Program and Policy Officer of Reeve Foundation. So in that role, Regina Bly oversees the operations of the National Paralysis Research Center by developing and delivering programs that provide critical resources and services to people so that they could build healthy and independent lives. And on a personal note, Regina herself sustained a C6, C7 spinal cord injury at the age of 10. So she brings over 2 decades of disability policy and advocacy experience and helps Reeve move to work more directly with people living with spinal cord injury and paralysis. So thank you both for being here. I know we've got Dr. Baptista is joining us from finishing up a conference. So the scientific officer's work is never done. So we really appreciate your time. And just to give some focus to what our agenda is today. So we'll be having a conversation for roughly the next half hour or so. And then we'll be sharing a story about one of our current residents at Cheshire Home and weaving that into our conversation as well. We will be able to take questions and answers toward the latter part of our conversation, and we can give you instructions at that point if you'd like to ask a question of either of our guests. So again, thank you for joining. We're really thrilled to have you here. So I was hoping that you can give us a bit of an overview on what the Reeve Foundation does and what exciting things we have going on there.
Yeah, Regina, did you want to start on this or?
Thanks. It had you first. I was like, okay, let me following the script. All right. So I will give you an overview of our resources and all of the wonderful work that we do. And it's exciting about what's happening. But first, I'd like to give a description for those who need it to make sure we're being inclusive. I'm a Black female, middle-aged with locks that are pinned up. I'm also wearing jewelry, and I have a multicolor shirt that is complementary to Black color as well. And as mentioned, I have a spinal cord injury, so I'm using a wheelchair. It's not visible, but just helps for the context of the discussion. And so the National Paralysis Resource Center has been around since 2002, and it was co-founded by Christopher and Dana Reeve. And it's a resource that is federally funded. We are the only federally funded resource that is available to help people with paralysis maintain or become familiar with paralysis when an injury or diagnosis becomes available. We are located in New Jersey, but we have staff all over the country that's available to help individuals in their journey of paralysis.
That's fantastic. I think we recognize the names Christopher and Dana Reeve to know that the National Paralysis Resource Center is there and available as part of this great organization that provides care is really helpful. And overall, the Reeve Foundation has a number of different focuses. So Regina, as you just mentioned, some of it is on providing resources and being the only nationally focused one. It allows people to benefit from their resources across the country. Dr. Baptista, is it okay if I call you Marco for purposes of
Yes,
our conversation
please call me
today?
Marco.
Okay, Marco. So could you tell us more about the research side of what the Reeve Foundation is focused on?
Yeah, so with the research side, I mean, we're trying to be holistic. So in having both care and research combined together under one umbrella, I think is very powerful. The research side, these are private dollars, private donations that help support the research. I'm new to the organization. I've been here about 1.5 years, and so I've been putting in a new program in place that is really emphasizing high risk, high reward research. Really putting big emphasis on breaking down silos so that researchers are sharing information, sharing their ideas, and sharing data, and making sure that we're going to be very much engaged with industry. Because in the end, industry does have, resources and the expertise to help bring therapeutics up to getting regulatory approval. So just making sure that we have all the right research stakeholders around the table is a very important part of our strategy. And I work very closely with Regina to really understand where the unmet needs are, so that we can get the research complementing all of that work that's done on the care side.
Yeah, that bridge is really what's important, because it's there was, of course, lots of great advances in more that preclinical science and understanding, what the nuts and bolts of spinal cord injury is, and how we can potentially be able to do some treatment or be able to improve mobility. But really listening to the population of people and their caregivers and their clinicians of what is actually needed, what is the group of folks who are most affected looking to gain from research, is really important. So, and some research will start at more of a basic mechanism, and that impact will trickle down. And sometimes we need more of that where the rubber meets the road sort of approach. So I'm so glad to hear that is such an integral part of Reeve's work.
Yeah, I would even say even more than just getting feedback, just making sure that our research process incorporates, the SCI lived experience. So, for example, when we solicit applications, or applications come to us for certain research projects, we really want to make sure that we're getting all eyes on this project to understand, not just on the scientific level, if it's going to be something that we're interested in, but if it's actually going to be feasible and make sense for the person living with SCI. So we always try to get folks with lived experience to be looking at these applications and provide their feedback, and if we fund something, have them follow the project all the way through its life cycle. So I think it's very important.
That's great. Can you tell us a bit about what some current research hot topics are, or what we're currently investigating, or things that have recently, been published or funded?
Yeah, I think the hottest topic right now is around electrical stimulation. A lot of different types of electrical stimulation to get at movement, or to get at blood pressure, or to get at upper extremity function. And this is something that I think it has really blown up, and there's been a revolution around understanding a lot more about how electrical stimulation works. So, for example, there are companies out there, one where we have a partnership with Onward Medical that has two different platforms of electrical stimulation. Their first platform is transcutaneous stimulation, which is stimulation that's kind of non-invasive, like electrodes on different parts of the back of the neck, that are being used to see if you can improve hand and arm function. Onward Medical has just completed a pivotal trial. So this is a clinical trial that is generating data that is now sufficient for them to present it to regulatory agencies to try to get approval. That trial was called Uplift, and they've started to communicate some of the results of that trial, and they're in communications with the FDA right now to see if they can get approval for second half of next year. That platform from Onward is called ARC-EX. The EX stands for external, because it's just an external placement. They have another platform called ARC-IM, IM standing for implantable, and this is epidural stimulation. So stimulation that's going into the epidural space of the spinal cord, more invasive, requires surgery. And they've been publishing quite a bit of work around improving movement. I know they're making a really big push around starting clinical trials for restoring dysfunction and blood pressure. And this is something that maybe 2025, 2026, we'll start to see how the outcomes of these clinical trials are, and hopefully there'll be even more potential therapies to help with function for the SCI community, because we're at a point right now that there just isn't anything at all. And everything that we do with the research plan is to try to reduce risk in doing research in SCI. That hopefully will translate into doing faster research, because things do go very slow, because it is a tough process to try to get a therapy approved.
Right. I think that's
So very
always the
exciting around
challenge.
electrical stimulation. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier when you were describing about Reeve's approach to funding scientific work that you're really looking for those high risk, high reward sorts of projects. And this really does fit the
Yeah.
bill. And it is what people are clamoring for. They're looking to
Yeah,
restore
and I
these
think we can even take greater risk to help accelerate.
Mm.
So for example, a lot of work that's done with epidural stimulation is around movement and blood pressure. But what would epidural stimulation do for bladder dysfunction? That's
Mhm.
a complete unknown. We don't even know if that's a safe approach
Mhm.
to dealing with neurogenic bladder. So those are the types of projects that get me excited, because I know that those are the questions that other investors are asking these groups. They're asking, is it safe? Which means,
Mhm.
have you conducted a human clinical trial? And
Mhm.
those are very expensive trials, very risky. If the Reeve Foundation can take on that risk, we potentially can accelerate a program that just won't go anywhere if we don't get involved. So that's one specific example.
Yeah. And when you say so high risk, high reward, I think the risk, there is something where we are talking about medical science, but it's a lot of financial risk is really kind of that you're throwing your chips down and kind of hoping that
Yep.
that what you can do would work. And because if it does work, wow, that's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, work in the sense of, let's say that it's safe and tolerable.
Yes.
That is huge. So now when an investor says, do you think you can move epidural stimulation into neurogenic bladder? You could say, well, we've already conducted a small clinical trial, but in humans, and it's shown to be safe and tolerable, and that reduces risk tremendously.
Right.
Really eliminate it, but we get a step closer. And so those are projects that are definitely on my radar, and we're working with a lot of different groups, and earlier projects too, making sure that projects that haven't reached the clinic are going to stand a chance into getting to the clinic, and doing everything we can so that we support data sets being built that we know regulatory agencies and investors want to see.
Right. And so you mentioned earlier that you are really encouraging people to share that data across making sure that it's discoverable. And what I think about being a researcher myself is that, especially when we're working in groups of clinical populations like spinal cord injury and other types of paralysis, when it's not something that is super common in the community, there's only so much that a small place can do in terms of data collection. So there may be a certain number of people. We're in New Jersey, so a certain number of people with a spinal cord injury in New Jersey. But you start to combine that information with, say, researchers in California, with researchers in Texas. You've now amplified the power of what you can do. So this sounds like something you've really thought about before as well.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're supporting a project, we want to make sure that all the expertise is there, and it's very difficult sometimes for one lab to have all that expertise, or for one small company to have all the expertise and the resources. I spent some time in big pharma, and I saw firsthand that with a program that we had a wide range of expertise around the table. And this needs to get emulated with other groups. So that's one. And then two, I think the data that then gets generated needs to be placed in open data repositories, and SCI has a great one called the Open Data Commons. So the infrastructure is there. There is a website where you can upload raw data, meaning the data that's in your Excel sheet that you haven't really done any modifications to, and put it onto that website. But the incentives are not there to do this. Academic groups are looking to publish, so they can be very cagey. They don't want to be sharing their information. They don't want to get scooped. That's the big word. You don't want to have someone else get that publication instead of you. And all these things are not benefiting the the community? What would benefit if these things get uploaded? Maybe there's different ideas, there's different hypotheses that get generated. Maybe it stops someone from doing something that one group already knows doesn't work. That saves a lot of time and money, and then they can be redirected to something that is more promising. So one of the first grants I put in place when I joined, it was to the University of Alberta in Canada. One of the architects of that Open Data Commons resides there, and we're supporting so that they can get a data retrieval specialist, somebody who can physically go to labs that we know have data. Some of the data has been data that we have supported in the past, and make sure that they get educated and encouraged so that that data can go into the Open Data Commons. So I think there's the high risk, high reward interventional projects that we need to support, but the whole ecosystem of sharing where the incentives are just not there, and the incentives are not there for industry also. They don't want their competitors to get first in class and best in class before they do. We're in a good position as a neutral convener. That all the skin in the game that we have is that we want to help, we want to accelerate and lower the risk. So everything that we can do to help both academics and industry and encourage them to work together, because again, one group doesn't have all the expertise. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a hot topic now in research, and a lot of the federally funded grants, it's now a requirement that you are having to put in your grant when you're asking the federal government for research funds. You need to say, and here's how I'm going to share my data, my information that I've collected with the scientific community, so we can all learn.
Yeah,
and
this is a great start. The NIH started this in February, where you have to have an open data plan in place if you want to get funding. And I think this is something that as nonprofits that we can back and ensure that we change the culture. And I think we can change the culture to the point where something that initially was thought of as risky, it'll now be more risky for someone not to share the data. I think it'll look really bad if they're not doing it. They're not going to be tied into the conversations that are happening around the shared data, and they can be at a higher risk of not being able to progress their program. We want to make that switch.
Yes, and I think the more then we're all sharing data, the more we can focus on it, because more can kind of spiral. But now it makes me think also for people who are living with spinal cord injury and their caregivers, how do they get involved in research? So there's kind of the scientists and the funders side, but what about getting how would people join a study that Reeve funds?
Yeah, there's some good resources out there to find out which clinical trials you might want to participate in. It's called SCI Trials Finder. And you can put in your location, your level of injury, the time of your injury, and you can get matches. So it's almost like a matchmaker for clinical trials. I think everyone needs to go in with eyes wide open when you're participating in a clinical trial, that this is an experiment. This is not a therapy. The whole point of doing the clinical trial is because we don't know if it's going to work. And unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't get communicated clear enough, but that's the reality. So there is risk in participating. I think everyone's desire to participate needs to be a personal decision, but you need to know that this is an experiment. It might not work. There might be safety issues that are implicated in participating in that trial. And it might preclude you in the future for participating in another clinical trial. So getting as much information as possible, but that's one good resource to start with the SCA Trials Finders.
Okay, that's a great tip. And sometimes it allows people to get access to some resources, as you appropriately said. It's not necessarily a treatment, but it could provide some additional support that you might not otherwise have access to. I know, personally, we do a lot of psychosocial research. I do a lot of cognitive research. And if that's not being as offered, then it's one opportunity for people to get involved.
Absolutely. There could be a lot of positives in doing it or getting access to a particular type of rehab. But I think the bottom line still needs to be that there's altruism involved. And the participation of volunteers for a clinical trial is an incredible service to science.
Yes.
but it might not translate in the short term for a therapy. It could translate in the long term. And
right. And I hear that from a lot of research participants. They're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it to help the next person down the line. And that's exactly what we just heard from our board member, Mark, of I can recognize that this was my fortunate scenario of I had a lot of support when I had my injury, but someone else may not. So I can do what I can to help the next person down the line. And we really do need a lot of that because even, and as you were saying, we want to make sure that people with paralysis and spinal cord injury, their caregivers, all of those stakeholders are included in this process. So we are doing the best possible research and then translating it to clinic, to practice, to resources.
Yeah, I mean, without that participation, you will not get a therapy. That is just part of the process. That these stages of clinical trials labeled phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, where you go from safety and tolerability to start to get more of because you got greater numbers into a glimpse if it's actually going to work, getting at efficacy. Without participation, without getting recruitment, without having the retention, it'll fail.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to jump in real quick. Mark actually has his hand raised, so I wanted to see if we could take a quick question while we're still on the same topic.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, I do have a question for Marco. Is there any differentiation in your, for example, your Uplift project or your other projects, as opposed comparing acute injuries or anything in the last, say, 6 months to more chronic injuries, which are, my definition would be more than 6 months, because there's obviously a very different scenario going into an acute injury as opposed to that. I'm wondering if you make distinctions in your research as to those groups.
Yeah, we definitely make distinctions in the sense that, you know, we definitely want to try to capture both. Not every project or every therapeutic approach will be conducive to chronic. So, for example, companies like AbbVie and Mitsubishi, they have a particular drug target called RGMA. Mechanistically, it makes sense for an acute population. But you have other companies like NerveGen that have a peptide approach that now they're starting to explore what it would look like in both subacute and chronic. Electrical stimulation has been applied a lot to chronic. So we want diversity in the approaches. In fact, I talk a lot about how a good metric of if what we're doing is working, to look at the clinical landscape, and do we see increased number of clinical trials? Do we see diversity of different approaches in different populations? And third, make sure that these clinical trials are smart in the sense that most trials fail for many reasons. With that high attrition rate, we want to get as much good information as possible so that the next clinical trial will be a better one.
Right. Yeah, that's a fantastic question, Mark. I think, you know, being able to address the full spectrum, because you have the folks who are recently injured who are kind of in flux and kind of figuring where they might land, and then the folks who have, you know, been living with it for a considerably longer time. And I think that's actually a great segue, because I wanted to shift to hearing more about Regina's end of things, more about the resources that are available. And man, thinking about how the resources someone needs after a spinal cord injury are going to maybe look very different at the point of injury, and then over time as they are learning to live with it, as their caregivers are adapting, as their health may change. You know, we're all getting older, and being able to balance all of those. So the resources available really do need to be flexible. So Regina, would you mind telling us a bit about the resource? You gave us a great overview earlier about the National Paralysis Resource Center, but what sorts of specific types of resources could someone get access to through the Reeve Foundation?
Yes, and I also like to expand. I don't want everyone to think that we only focus on spinal cord injury. What Marco focuses on is research around spinal cord injury, but we also expand to a vast population. So we say paralysis in general, and that covers someone like myself, who's a 37-year survivor of gun violence, as well as spinal cord injury. A lot of the resources are available for myself, but then we also have people with cerebral palsy, ALS, muscular dystrophy, even traumatic brain injury is another population that we also focus on. So when we say resources, it is vast, and I could say it could be even overwhelming for someone that's first starting out. Because I think at first people are trying to focus on, I want to make sure that I can figure out how to know about research and how can I start walking again, or maybe increase my quality of life. But our resources help you in the interim. And that means we have programs that are available for people to participate in. And I can't stress enough, free. You don't have to pay for any of our resources. So the first part is our line of defense, and it's our information specialist. People call in at all hours of the day wanting information about, I'm newly injured or I receive a diagnosis, and they want to know what's out there for them. And we have a team that's available to help out in that area. And then it goes to the different programs when it comes to those nonprofits that are interested in providing help. If they focus on paralysis, we would grant out funding for those individuals. Then we have peer and family support programs. And I think that one is really critical because they get matched up with individuals that are across the country that might be experiencing the same type of situation, and they can go to them for whatever reason, whenever it works for their schedule, to be able to find out how do I manage my bowel program? How do I manage dating? How do I manage just being out in the public and knowing that I have paralysis? And we have people with lived experience that are at the ready to be able to provide assistance with the peer programs. And that helps with someone that might be associated with a family member, or they could be an individual. They could be, I know that recently I was paired with someone that fell under the LGBTQ category, as well as being a person of color. And we were able to match this person. And I know that they had mentioned that they went across different other organizations and they didn't have somebody available specific for their direct need. And we were able to match that person. And that's, I think, because we have a 20-year span, we have a database of people that can be available to be able to help people with their unique needs. So it doesn't matter what your identity is, whether it comes to sex, race, and even party affiliation. We figure out ways to be able to have people with lived experience to be able to help you out in the area. Another area that I think is really important, and that's based on, if you turn on the news at any given point, there's a lot of back and forth when it comes to politics. There's a lot of back and forth when it comes to just understanding the policies that are available for people with disabilities and paralysis. And we have a robust advocacy and policy team that can help anyone that is interested in that area to maintain all current information where it's relevant about either policy, finances, related to things that are happening in Washington, D.C. I happen to live in Washington, D.C., so I'm with the team that is responsible for making sure that people remain up to date on information. And it's important for this program, everyone to understand the components to it. Caregiving, it's one that we focus on as a policy, where at this point, there's not a lot of funding and attention to when it comes to caregiving. And those are areas that we have teams that are focusing on that, as well as accessible airline travel, or even going down to basic areas of just making sure that you have the ability to have wheelchairs that will allow you to go up and down so you can reach cabinets, or being able to recline to go to beauty salons. I mean, it's those things that people don't think about. We focus on all of those areas. We also focus on the military veterans program. We have a robust program there for those who have received an injury or a diagnosis that was through that program. We help them to figure out how to get their benefits, how to get associated with the Veterans Administration program, and to also look at all of the other opportunities of where we can work together in tandem. And then lastly, we have on our website, and we'll get that link out to you during the course of this discussion, about our resource guide. It's a 442 comprehensive guide that goes from A to Z about the different types of paralysis that I've mentioned and some of the things that will help you to maintain while you're going through your journey. And then we also have other resources out there, from our pamphlets to our personal wallet cards that people can use to be able to utilize whatever is needed along their journey. I know that was a lot, Erica.
Wow.
Go fast so that I don't take up a lot
Wow.
of time. But I just want you to know that there is a lot that we have to offer.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you guys have thought of everything is really what the impact that I'm hearing. And from a really person focused approach of what is someone going to want, what is someone going to need, what need do they have that they haven't even anticipated yet. So it sounds like anyone who checks in with Reeve is going to have access to so many resources and feel very comprehensively cared for. So that's all fantastic, and goodness, that's a lot to juggle. So I'm glad we've got you at the helm, because you clearly have a good sense of how thoroughly all those things are needed. So I think what I'd like to do next is talk a little bit or introduce one of our Cheshire Home residents, so we can kind of get a little bit sense of his story, and then we'll come back to finish up our discussion and get to some questions and answers. So we do have a short video of a interview with our resident. His name is Steve. And Steve has been at Cheshire Home since last April. His spinal cord injury occurred 39 years ago as a result of a motor vehicle accident, but he didn't stop that from, or didn't let that stop him from leading a very full life for 3 decades. He got married, bought a house, had children, was gainfully employed. As you might expect, the pandemic was hard for a lot of folks, and needed more support with wound care than he could get in the context of the pandemic. So that was how, after a stint at Kessler Institute for Rehabilitation, which is just up the road from us, he transferred to Cheshire Home, and he's been working with us after his shoulder surgery and continuing to reach his goals. So I'll defer to, I believe Kim can bring up a video that will give us a little interview with him.
Great, so I'm here with Steve. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Circle of Friends discussion.
Thank you for having me, Kim.
Of course. So we already heard a little bit of a backstory just about your injury, your journey along the way. But can you share with us just a little bit more about what really brought you to Cheshire Home, how you got here, and what it was like once you were here?
Sure. As we all know, COVID hit. And once COVID hit, nurses dried up at home. And I was put in the hospital because I had a sore. They couldn't release me from the hospital because they couldn't get nursing for my home. So it was, where can I go that's got nursing and whatnot? And Cheshire was the place that came to mind from my physiatrist. And so we looked into it. I was interviewed by Athea, and lo and behold, I came here in April, and I've been happy ever since.
Now, you've been here so since April, right? So what, 8-9 months now. So what have you found the most helpful since being here on just your personal journey to independence?
Well, for example, Vocation offers a program, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? Now, I'm not, young by any stretch of the imagination, but I did want to continue, if I wasn't going to work in an office facility or whatever, I wanted to contribute and give back. And when I was first injured 39 years ago, I lectured throughout the state about drinking and driving. So now my next journey is to speak about the last 39 years of my journey.
So as you know, we're a very small facility in comparison. You know, we're 35 beds. So you're one of the 35 residents here, right? What does that mean to you? You know, what does that mean to you to just be one of those? And what has been so helpful about being here?
Well, being one of the 35 right there, I'm very fortunate because this is a very special place. The care is unbelievable. 24/7 nursing. You have CNAs that'll help you do whatever you need to get you in and out of bed, and it's amazing. The people are amazing that are residents here. You know, some make me feel like I'm not grateful, you know, for what I have. And, you know, you learn a lot about yourself as you go through other people's stories. And some of these people just have, you know, tremendous grit. And the way they get on with their lives every day with a smile is phenomenal. And I think part of that is Cheshire.
And you have that as well.
Thank you.
So as you know, the Reeve Foundation is really focused on their research, their resources, and the importance of quality of care, right? So what does that mean to you? You know, what is so important about having a good system and good quality care in place for not just you personally, but for anyone with a spinal cord injury or paralysis?
Well, the Reeve Foundation is like world class. And, you know, I think everybody strives to be the best at what they can be. And here at Cheshire, we have a fine group of people that all work under the same roof, you know, and they work well together. It's like a well-fitted glove. And I think you get so much out of being in Cheshire because you have a vocation where, you know, you can learn what you want to do in the future. You have PT, you know, physical therapy, you have occupational therapy, all under one roof. You're just very fortunate, you know, to be in a facility that offers all that.
Yeah, one-stop shop. PT, finances, social services.
Exactly.
Great dietary food. You got
the
it
food
all.
is too good.
Well, good. I'm glad you are enjoying your time here, and it seems like taking full advantage of everything that Cheshire Home has to offer. So we're excited to watch you reach those goals that you have.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here with us.
All right.
Well, if Steve is watching today, thank you so much for sharing your story. We're really glad to have you there at Cheshire, and you're definitely an inspiration to us. I'm glad to hear that you're able to appreciate the level of care, and I think this goes a lot to what Regina was saying about the amount of resources needed to be able to kind of get back to life and be able to hit all the milestones that you want to hit. So I wanted to speak for a few minutes before we start wrapping up about kind of what is needed for people with spinal cord injury and paralysis. What type of that good quality care that you can provide that hits all of those different domains of everyday living. What is needed? What's important?
I think that's an interesting question and a really good one. And it's one that we struggle with on a daily basis. And I think it helps us to stay on our toes to just make sure that we're maintaining relevancy in a way that we're providing the most up-to-date information and resources to people. But it comes in multiple ways. It's one where you're reaching out to people that have expertise in certain areas. When he mentioned housing and the fact that he was in a nursing facility and was not able to leave because he didn't have adequate care. I think that goes back to some of the policy issues and concerns that we are aware of and that we're trying to help out when people are facing those issues. How do we prevent that and have it where he can go home and have all the care and support that's needed? We have other resources that I didn't mention, and it comes to a lot of our educational components where we have expertise in areas that provides information and details of how they can connect with these individuals to help them out whenever they are needing additional assistance. And that even comes to the issue with him in a nursing facility needing to relocate back to his home. Also understanding how to be mentally prepared for this journey, what's needed. So there's a lot of mental restoration opportunities for people to be able to participate in when we have our educational programs, whether that is the Guptas down to Nurse Linda, who has been a part of our team even when Christopher Reeve was alive. She has extensive resources that she provides to people on a regular basis for those that are looking at that additional detail to help them maintain their quality of life.
Yeah, and you do bring up such an important point of there's always new resources, and it made me think, that these, while high class care, the care that Christopher Reeve got when he had his injury is probably so different from what currently is available. So being able to keep on top of what is current, what is next, and looking toward the future of and anticipating those needs so the people in a rough spot in their life have that resource is so helpful. I think we could have a conversation for like another 3 hours about all of this. But I want to just wrap up with one final question of what do you see on the horizon for people with spinal cord injury paralysis, for our residents of Cheshire Home? What are the next steps that we think might be coming down the pike for them? Margaret, do you want to talk about kind of the next research that we think is going to be hot and needed?
Yeah, I think sort of epidural stimulation 2.0, kind of moving epidural stimulation into different indications, like I mentioned before, with neurogenic bladder, and also advancing it so that the epidural stimulation is not going to be as for movement as robotic as it sort of is right now. And so there's a lot of emphasis around the brain-computer interface, the brain-spinal interface, and that's something that we're very much involved in. And then lastly, even those people that run these programs for electrical stimulation, they know that this is not the complete answer to everything. And there needs to be a combinatorial approach. We need to be mixing different therapies together. I mean, it's already happening with rehab. Everything that's being done with a clinical trial has a rehab component. We need a tertiary aspect of it too, so that you have two interventional therapies and the rehab. But that's not going to happen if people are not talking to each other, and that's why it's so important. It would be naive to think that groups could just be working together in silos and then all of a sudden combine their therapeutic approaches. It's too complex to do that. You need to be starting early on, and we want to facilitate those conversations, and hopefully we'll be successful.
Yeah, I think the groundwork that you and Reeve Foundation have laid of how can we all collaborate, work together, increase incentives to be able to share data, this will all ultimately gel to get better quality, safe, efficacious, usable treatments to the people who need them sooner, and then that they will be what they need.
Yeah, a concrete example of that, we had a very successful SCI conference that we helped put together in La Jolla, California on June 29th. We were able to get 6 companies with different therapeutic approaches, some of them direct competitors, to talk about their programs. And more importantly, to talk about general obstacles in the entire field that maybe if they work together with a nonprofit like the Reeve Foundation, we can sort of move things faster. So we need to be doing more of those types of events.
Yeah, absolutely. And Regina, any final thoughts on what do you think is kind of coming up next down the pike?
I think for the National Paralysis Resource Center, it's part of staying on top of policies and making sure that our resources are current. We're getting ready to release the latest edition of our resource guide. And so it's going to have new information in there that I think will be very useful for the community. It has a new section on caregiving that I think people will be excited to read about. And then also we are very involved in airline travel as well as some of the seating wheelchair components. And so I think you're going to see more information from us. And then even on a social aspect, I think what is really important, I think our partnerships with non-traditional players such as Peloton and also United Airlines are things that we are moving the needle to show that it doesn't have to be disability focused, but people with disabilities are everywhere. And so we want to make sure that they have the ability to be seen without as many barriers as it exists today.
Well, that's a great new directions that we can all look forward to. So I just want to thank you both for such a great conversation. There's so much information, but it really shows where things are moving. They're moving quick, and this is so exciting. And I think about our residents at Cheshire Home and what they can look forward to. So thank you for sharing what you described today. We have a few minutes for questions and answers. So ways that you can ask a question, as we have Shirley, who has demonstrated for us so lovely. You can raise your hand, and then we're able to call on you. Or if you feel more comfortable, feel free to write it in the chat, and we'll get someone to ask that question. So we've got about 5 minutes or so. But Shirley, I wanted to defer, go to you first.
Sure. So thank you. This is really interesting. I think this is for Dr. Batista. So everybody's talking AI, and you've got a lot of siloed research, and there's a lot of intersection of SCI. Are there efforts to try and use AI to bring all this data together and really make some fast advances?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're definitely thinking a lot about AI and machine learning when data is being placed into these open data commons, to make sure that they're formatted in a way that would facilitate that type of technology to be applied to it. We're also planning next year to launch a request for applications to the world, not just to groups that work on SCI, but we'd love to see groups that are doing artificial intelligence, algorithms and machine learning to analyze the data that's already there. So both in the input stage and in the output stage for data analysis, we've been thinking quite a bit about AI.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the hot topic at the moment, and how we can benefit from it to aggregate everything that we have is certainly important.
Yeah, we're beyond the days of one researcher being able to look at all of the research, and there needs to be something a little more sophisticated.
Mm-hmm. And just to highlight for those, if you open up the group chat, Regina's been kind enough to add in a lot of resources. Kim also added in information about the Paralysis Resource Guide, education booklets, and more about the Paralysis Resource Center. I know I will be doing some reading. You said that was 442 pages, Regina? Ooh,
Don't let
like
that scare you. It's one of those things where you just look at chapters and you go to it, and then you read it. But if you're having trouble sleeping and you want to read about other sections that don't pertain to you, it's a good read. You also know what others are facing, and it'll just help you to have more of a comprehensive understanding of the different paralysis that are out there and the work that we did.
Okay. And that you said that's what's is being updated soon?
Yes, the current one still works, but I think within the next month, we'll have another one that will release that will have updated information.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I definitely appreciate that you're adding information regarding caregiving, and that's a broader conversation we're having across so many chronic health conditions right now, and see the loss of income and for those caregivers too is a huge issue. So how to change that at the policy level? I'm so glad that we have you guys there fighting the good fight and trying to get that more focused and by the people who can make those changes.
Absolutely.
Okay, and Kim also added in some information about Cheshire Home, so feel free to check out those links in the chat as well. All right, I'm not seeing other questions, and we're just about time. So I want to just extend a very heartfelt thank you to our guests today, Dr. Margaret Baptista and Regina Bly, both of the Reeve Foundation. I think this was a really fruitful talk. I think I have a lot to chew on, and I'm sure a lot of the information that you provided, our folks at Cheshire Home will be able to have a renewed sense of, oh, okay, what other resources? What do we want to think about next? How will this change our care? And that's exactly why we wanted to have this circle of friends with y'all, because as we talked about in terms of research and data, we only grow when we start to integrate all of these resources and have this conversation across organizations, because the people who are going to benefit are the ones who really need assistance the most. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all of you for joining, spending your lunch hour with us. If you have any further questions, feel free to follow up directly through with Kim Eskin of Cheshire Home. Her information is in the chat. Regina also kindly added in her information if anyone has questions about the National Paralysis Resource Center. So thank you again. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your afternoon.
Thank you so much.